Since 2011, Syria has been embroiled in a devastating civil war. What started as peaceful protests against the Assad regime quickly spiraled into a full-scale conflict. Multiple factions, rebel groups, Kurdish forces, and foreign powers like the US, Turkey, and Iran have all fought for control. But one force remained a constant ally to Assad: Russia. With Russian military support, Assad managed to hold on to power despite the odds, pushing back insurgents and securing key cities, including Aleppo and Damascus. But now, everything is changing. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Recent reports indicate that Russia, once Syria's staunchest ally, is now scaling back its military operations. This sudden retreat has left the Syrian government vulnerable, with no immediate backup to suppress the growing opposition. This retreat, coupled with internal discontent and economic collapse, has sparked a chain reaction that has set the stage for a coup. In the face of mounting pressure, Assad's grip on power faltered. A coup, fueled by military and political elites who no longer believed in his leadership, erupted in the capital, Damascus. With loyalist forces overwhelmed and the prospect of arrest or worse, Assad made a dramatic decision: to flee the country he once ruled with an iron fist. According to eyewitnesses, Assad's departure was swift and secretive. He reportedly fled to an undisclosed location, leaving behind a government in disarray. With no clear successor in place, Syria is now teetering on the brink of total collapse. The collapse of the Assad regime has left Syria in a state of chaos. Millions of people who have already suffered through years of violence and displacement now face an uncertain future. The humanitarian crisis continues to escalate, with international organizations struggling to provide aid to the millions who remain trapped in the country. The question on everyone's mind now is, what happens next? International leaders are scrambling to address the fallout from Assad's departure. The United Nations has called for immediate peace talks, but with so many competing interests, Turkey, the US, Iran, and even Russia, it's unclear who will step in to stabilize Syria. Will a new government emerge? Or will Syria continue to fracture into warring factions? The regional powers are also calculating their next moves. Russia's withdrawal signals a shift in Moscow's interests, leaving Iran and Turkey to fill the power vacuum. For Assad, his days as a leader seem numbered, but his legacy in Syria remains as complicated as ever. What role will he play in the future of his nation, if any? The collapse of Assad's regime doesn't just impact Syria, it has far-reaching consequences for the entire Middle East. The power vacuum left in Syria could destabilize neighboring countries, especially Lebanon, Iraq, and Turkey, who have already been affected by the war. The presence of extremist groups, as well as the involvement of foreign powers, could turn this situation into a broader regional conflict. The next few months will be crucial in determining Syria's future. Will it rebuild? Or will it continue to suffer under the weight of war, corruption, and foreign interference? One thing is clear: the road to peace will be long, and the price of stability, high. As the dust settles and the world watches closely, Syria faces an uncertain future. What role will the international community play in shaping that future? And what will become of the Syrian people who have endured a decade of unimaginable suffering? Only time will tell. Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like and subscribe and support us on Patreon, link in description below. Today we have breaking news coming out from the Republic of Syria, as it appears that the Syrian central government has completely fallen as Syrian Salvation Government forces from the Idlib region are rapidly advancing nearly 50 mil a day through the area of central Syria and are rapidly advancing towards the third largest city in Syria, the city of Ms. As it does appear that Russian and EN forces are in an absolute retreat from the area, with the city of Hama being given up without a fight. Currently we've seen that Russian air forces have conducted a bombing campaign against the city of Aleppo and have ended up already sustaining a great deal of damage from ground fire, as a Russian aircraft was shot down over the city today. Meanwhile, other factions involved in the Syrian civil war, including the Syrian Democratic Forces, have tried to seize the advantage or the opportunity that's been given to them, with some SDF forces rapidly advancing to take the few remaining suburbs of Aleppo that are not being currently controlled by the SSG at this time. We also understand that at this very moment there is a major coup underway inside the city of Damascus against Bashar al-Assad's reign, as one of his surviving brothers is attempting to try and take control of the country. From what we're understanding at this moment, the exact whereabouts of Bashar al-Assad are unknown, as we have not heard his exact whereabouts, whether they are in Moscow or in Damascus, as a large amount of conflicting information is coming about whether Bashar al-Assad really is still in Syria or not. We've also seen that the Islamic Republic of Iran has violated Turkish airspace today, and a Turkish F-4 Phantom was sent to intercept the aircraft and fly it back towards Iranian territory. Meanwhile, the situation inside of Russia appears To be bleak as the commander of Russian forces in Syria was just removed from his position considering the rapid collapse and deterioration of the armed forces condition inside of Syria. We've also been able to hear that the Russian Federation is once again on the desperate verge of having no manpower, as Russian forces have tried to conduct another raid in Moscow today to find more manpower, as a major oil depot at Shinsky continues to burn well on into its second and third day. But we have an insane amount of news to cover today, and without further ado it is time for us to get right into the Syrian conflict as we're seeing it at the moment. Many people may be hearing right now from mainstream news organizations that the city of Aleppo has fallen. This was actually known about 24 hours ago, and we were able to cover that here on this channel live. So to see you all up to speed with what has happened yesterday, or really over the past few days, and what just happened today, in short, the SSG, or otherwise known as the Syrian Salvation Government, organization with very questionable origins but supported by the Turkish government, conducted a major offensive towards the city of Aleppo around 4 days ago. This offensive was really wildly successful. That's the best way that we could put it at the moment, as Syrian and Russian forces that were defending the city practically dissolved and collapsed in the first initial attack and did not create any form of meaningful resistance beyond that point, and largely went into what is called a rout, meaning that they went into an uncontrolled retreat that has no organization whatsoever, meaning that their combat and fighting abilities are far worse off if they're ever engaged again. Beyond that point, the Syrian Democratic Force then started to move into the eastern side of Aleppo. Although they didn't take a large amount of the city, they did take a good amount of it, and then at this moment today we have now understood that the situation has gotten even worse. If you were to look at this map just yesterday, you would have seen that this entire area south of Abdil did not exist, or at least exist under SSG control, which is the Syrian Salvation Government. From what we understand, the Syrian Salvation Government is now starting to rapidly advance in just about every direction from the city of Il, attempting to take as much territory in Syria as they possibly can, and it looks as though they will be able to do it. We were able to hear just a little while ago that SSG forces were beginning to rapidly advance from Mat al-Numan and towards the area of the city of Hama itself, just a little whiles north of Hams, the third largest city in the entirety of the Republic of Syria. From what we were able to see, the rebels started to arrive in Hama, and it appeared that they were entering without shots being fired. We could see some of the forces moving in on the highway over there. This is apparently looking at the M5 towards the northern side of the city, and we can also see a large group of the rebels down here as well. We were then able to hear that apparently the city was taken quite literally without any shots being fired, as no fighting was being reported within the city of Hamama, with the Syrian Arab Army, which is the army of the Republic of Syria, and pro-Assad forces appearing to have totally abandoned the city prior to the arrival of rebel forces. We were able to see this in video, in picture evidence, as we saw both the Syrian and Russian armies withdrawing from Hama. We can see that in this clip right here, as that convoy out on the actual motorway is that of the Syrian Arab Army. Music. With the loss of the city of Hama came the Russians. The Russians then immediately started to leave as well through another corridor, most likely heading towards Latakia, as we were able to see the Russian convoy on the bridge above moving out of the city and on its way towards Latakia, showing that the city of Hama has completely fallen to rebel forces in quite literally less than a day. From what we understand, the Russians and Syrians had a large defensive force, or at least a large operational force, at the Hama military airport, which you can see right here. This airport was largely being used by Russian Federation aircraft and military activities, as the Syrian Arab Army doesn't really have any air forces to speak of at all, and appears to be fairly light as far as military equipment is concerned. They really don't have much of it. They're really a light army. An entire light army, not a light infantry unit, but just a light army. They don't have a lot of equipment for that matter at all. But it does appear that the Russians have completely abandoned the Hamama military airport, and the Syrian Arab Army actually completely abandoned the city of Hama itself, with the entire city now being brought under the control of the rebels. We were then able to see more proof of the rebels inside of Hama, of course uncontested, and also firing off celebratory gunfire, as they had taken the city without firing a shot. So it appears that they're going to get that ammo expenditure into the spreadsheets by firing it off after they took the city pretty much in a bloodless way. The Rambles have also already started to conduct some interesting actions after the Hama airfield was abandoned, as it looks as though, according to preliminary information, they are already back on the M5 again and heading towards Coms at the moment. I want to make this very clear: this advance is moving at about 50 m a day at this moment from the main front line that they had near to the city of Il, which was just 24 hours ago. From what we understand at the moment, it appears that if they continue 50 ms of ground advances per day, they will make it pretty much halfway to Damascus by the end of the day. Today Damascus may actually fall to SSG forces. If this is the really continued speed it would, the SSG forces are moving within 48 hours, which is a very serious sort of a situation for the Russians and the Syrian government to be looking at this moment. We also understand that there have been more videos of the rebels driving through Hama, which I'll show you right here. This one just came out only a few minutes ago, once again showing a large amount of the rebel convoys moving on their way on the southern side of the M5 in towards Homs. Music. It is incredibly bizarre to see that the Syrian government is collapsing this rapidly, and this has begun to lead us to see that the Russian Federation has gone into quite literally panic mode, as the commander of Russian forces in Syria was just removed from his position around 20 minutes ago. At the time of recording this video, we are also understanding that the Russian Federation is now attempting to conduct bombing campaigns against the SSG and Aleppo to try and critically erase a large amount of their forces that are still inside the city and bringing it under their control, as we were able to hear the reports that the city is being bombed by the Russian Air Force, as the Turkish-backed IIL rebels. The Syrian Salvation Army government is currently in control of the city at this time. It wasn't that much longer after we got that report that we then saw that a Russian aircraft had been shot down over the city just not too long ago. We see right, music. There we're not exactly sure what kind of aircraft it was. That information has not been given to us at the moment. We are not really sure if the SSG even knows a different variants of Russian aircraft, because they didn't say anything rather than a Russian aircraft was shot down, and so we don't know what it is either. It could have been anything. We saw the aircraft, but the size of it in the video was so small. I can't tell y'all whether that was a close air support aircraft such as an SC-2 or a multi-role aircraft such as an S-35 or an Su-27, which isn't really multi-role, that's more so air superiority, but nevertheless we really have no idea what the Russian aircraft that was shot down over Aleppo was. We just know that one has been shot down. Meanwhile, we've also heard that the Syrian Democratic Forces, which are undoubtedly largely the good guys in this conflict, have started to move into Aleppo as well, which we were able to see on film right here. DSTF is American-backed and supply, and that's why you'll see in this video a decent amount of American-provided military equipment, not an incredibly large amount, but you will see the occasional Humi like this one right here, and largely the rest of its technical and other sorts of random vehicles that the STF was able to build up over the years. We can see that MRAP almost ran over the cameraman. That once again driving may be a bit of a small issue, but hopefully the whole driving situation will be smoothed over in the future. And we can see the convoy is incredibly large one, and of course moving in to take control of the eastern areas of Aleppo. From what we understand, the SSG was not able to take complete control of the city of Aleppo. They actually were starting to have pretty much a power vacuum within the area of eastern Aleppo near to the Aleppo International Airport and the Aleppo Industrial City just outside of the Aleppo city area, and from what we know the SDF rapidly moved in and took control of the area. This is probably going to be a good thing moving on down the road, and we were able to hear that the Syrian Democratic Forces did take Aleppo International Airport, letting us know that at least 1/3 of the city is currently under SDF control. The reason why I'm saying it's a very good thing that the SDF could took control of some parts of Leo instead of the SSG is that the SSG is a little bit of a questionable organization, and this is something that have to take a little bit of a moment on to explain the different sides that we're seeing and who is a good side and who is a bad side. Generally anyone who is anti-Assad is considered to be good by the general public, but there is a good amount of nuance there that needs to be observed when talking about different factions that are involved in the Syrian civil war. The Syrian Democratic Forces, which exist on the northern side of the Euphrates. Our front line here for them is colored in orange, so everything above that line on screen is a part of the SDF. Those forces are American-backed and supplied, largely looking to create an independent Kurdish state at the end of the conflict that exists north of the Euphrates River, and they also want to attempt an overthrow of the Assad regime and bring forward a democratic institution of government inside of the Republic of Syria, something that was achieved way back in the day, but that was then really kind of undone by the Assad regime back in the 1970s, but nevertheless that's largely what the SDF is looking for, and if anyone could be called a friendly or good organization in support of Western interests, the SDF would certainly be one of them. Then there is the Syrian Free Army that is currently sitting around the area of the Adam garrison inside of southern Syria. This area is actually a US occupational zone. The area that I have highlighted in green and is the surrounding perimeter at the Adam garrison. This garrison houses the remainder of the Syrian Free Army, which isn't an incredibly large faction but is still an existent one that is anti-Assad and largely American-backed and supported entirely. They don't really conduct a lot of combat operations, however, due to their smaller size, but still they are American-backed and supported, and so for this reason we consider them to be the good guys, because they are on the western side. On the other hand, the other major third faction that is anti-Assad and the one that is really dominating the headlines today is the SSG, which is the Syrian Salvation Government. I cannot even tell y'all the actual origins of this group because I don't think YouTube would like the name even being mentioned, at least on a video, but these people's origin actually came from another group that the United States killed the leader of in Pakistan during, I believe, 2009 or 2010. If y'all are kind of getting the gist here, the government in charge of the SSG's zone of control is that of an autocratic, a super-religious dictatorship that largely runs their territory with an iron fist. They ideologically align to a larger group of questionable organizations that have existed in the Middle East for quite some time, and so while their advance is a welcome one in the sense that is going to maybe be a death nail for the Assad regime, it is also incredibly questionable and concerning, as this could be the creation of another major and extremist radical group that the United States and largely the world has to unite and fighting against, at least for the next year or two, until they're entirely crushed. It's something that I wish we could talk about a lot more here on this video, but YouTube just doesn't really like it when we get into the nitty-gritty of the exact kinds of ideological details that this group has. But I do want to make it very clear to everyone who's watching the stream right now, we do not support this group on the channel. Why? They are destroying the Assad regime, which is a Russian-backed nation for the large part, and that is an amazing thing. This group is about as questionable, if not more questionable, than the Assad regime that they are attempting to overthrow at the moment. And so while of course here on this channel we support the Syrian Democratic Forces and the Syrian Free Army, we do not support the Syrian Salvation Government for its questionable forms of ideology and also its radical form of government that it has at the moment that is not really pro-Western or pro-American. Even it's really everyone but themselves, which many people will know that sounds very similar to a lot of other organizations that cropped up in the Middle East in the mid-2010s that also had similar kinds of beliefs. But while this is going on, and while this group may be a very questionable group inside of northern Syria, we were able to see that inside of Damascus things are not going well at all. Down here we are understanding that there is actually an ongoing coup at the moment against Bashar al-Assad from a relatively unknown faction. We do not know if this faction is being led by one of the remaining or surviving brothers of Bashar al-Assad or what, but there is an ongoing coup, and we were able to hear the sounds of gunfire echoing throughout the streets of Damascus for music. And that's the end of that clip right there. But it is very interesting to see, and actually really quickly I just got breaking news right here, so let me make sure to get this out to y'all that we have gotten some information about the ongoing coup at the moment while I'm recording this, and I was trying to check on that really quickly, and it appears that channels linked to the elite 4th Armored Division of the Syrian Army, which is led by Mahar al-Assad, the brother of the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, are reporting some kind of military operation in the capital of Damascus. Official channels are claiming that fighting is ongoing against certain sorts of insurgent cells that have been discovered within the city, while others are claiming that the 4th Division has launched a coup d'etat against the Bashar al-Assad regime. We're not entirely sure which is true at the moment, but we were able to get a little bit of additional information before that more concrete information came out just a moment ago, that there was some sort of an ongoing coup inside of the capital, and it does appear that it may have been led by one of Bashar al-Assad's brothers, which we're now hearing is a lot more concrete at this moment, as it appears that the 4th Brigade is the one that's currently conducting the fighting inside the city at this moment. Meanwhile, the exact whereabouts of Bashar al-Assad, the guy that they're trying to overthrow, is not really known. No one actually even knows if he's in Damascus or in Moscow. Yesterday we were reporting he was in Moscow, and it appeared that Russian state media was saying that his family and himself was staying in the Four Seasons Hotel just outside of the Kremlin, but at this moment we still don't really know where he is. We got a report that a Russian Il-62 just landed in Damascus not too long ago, and it's leading us to believe that that may have been bringing Assad back to Syria, and he may actually be in Syria, or he may have been in Syria up until now, and now they're pulling him out of Syria and bringing them up to Moscow. We're not exactly sure on that sequence of events, but we were able to hear in Moscow again that according to current sources, Assad still is in Moscow, and all of his family is either in Russia with him at the Four Seasons Hotel, or they're in the United Arab Emirates on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula. We're not exactly sure where the guy is, we're not exactly sure where his family is either, and yesterday's information seemed very concrete on that matter that we were getting from multiple sources. Today we have no idea, so right now it's kind of a half and half in between Assad still being in Damascus, which will most likely change here very soon, or he is currently inside of Moscow, which may also change very soon depending on more information we get. At the moment while I'm making this video, I don't really feel comfortable saying with certainty where he is. Either it's Moscow or Damascus, so it's one of the two, but I'm not going to give a clear answer because we just don't have enough news or enough information on that yet to be able to make a clear statement on the whereabouts of Bashar al-Assad. But that is interesting in itself. He is currently unknown where he's at. He's pretty much missing in action. We don't know if he's in Damascus, we don't know if he's in Moscow. This official Twitter account said he was in Damascus, but no one can believe that, because that's usually what people would say when they're fleeing a country, is that everything's normal and everything's fine and he could be gone. So we do not know at the moment. We have no idea where he's at, and we're still trying to figure that out at this very moment. In the meantime, we have seen that the Islamic Republic of Iran has started to conduct some very interesting action today near the Turkish border, possibly a part of the larger Syrian civil war, as a Turkish F-14, actually a Iranian F-14, crossed the border's airspace in a Turkish F-4 Phantom, was sent to intercept the F-14 and return it back to Iranian airspace. We were able to see the clip right here, crazily enough, from the ground, showing the crazy maneuvers that the Turkish F-4 pilots were making to try and get the Iranian F-14 back into Iran. This was a pretty bizarre action to see. We're not really sure if diplomatic tensions or greens start rising in between Turkey and Iran at the moment, but an incredibly bizarre one. It's almost like watching a flying museum, as the F-4 and the F-14 have been completely removed from US military service, and the F-14s have largely been completely destroyed as well, to stop the Islamic Republic of Iran from getting spare parts to keep their F-14 fleet flying. But that's the end of the clip right there. It's still showing an absolute bizarre occurrence in the airspace of the Turkish-Iranian border just today. Meanwhile, inside the Russian Federation, things are still not going well in the payment of the Ukraine wars. We've been able to hear that a massive raid has been conducted by the Russian government today for conscripts, and according to what Russian media has said, the largest raids we've ever seen have been conducted as massive crackdowns on conscripts in Moscow are occurring. Men are being detained and sent to the draft centers, while SMS threats are being sent out, a warning of travel bans for those trying to leave the country during the raid. It's showing that the Russian Federation is still running out of manpower, and they're trying to desperately get as much as they can into the armed forces to try and keep their war machine alive in Ukraine, which is hardly hanging on by a thread at this moment, economically and militarily. From all information that we're getting, we've also seen that the major oil depot, the Atlas oil refinery in Rozov, continues to burn for its second day. This oil refinery, or more so oil depot, exists just north of Kenshinsky and was hit a little while ago by Ukrainian drone. The fire has persisted for an incredibly long time since then, and it appears that there is no chance of it subsiding anytime soon. We are going to be keeping as much of an eye as possible on the Ukraine war conflict and the ongoing Syrian civil war, which is now kicked off in massive form once again, to be able to try and get you all the most information and news that we can on what's going on. This is all of the news that we have at the moment, and by the time this video is going to be going out, which will probably be about 10 or 20 minutes after it's being recorded right here, a decent amount of this information may already be dated. So if you're hearing different things that are going on right now in the UAL news cycles, if you're somehow hearing that anywhere else rather than here, because we're really the only people covering at the moment, that is perfectly fine. We do know that this video is probably going to be outdated by them, but we want to try and get all the news out that we can. I also have to thank you all for watching so far as well, and if you all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment and subscribe. And if you've made it to this point so far in the channel and you want to let me know that you have made it here, please make sure to put a comment in the description below. Type 4 seasons in the comment section. That is 4 seasons for the Four Seasons Hotel, because I think Assad's going to be getting really acclimated with that one. If he really is there at this moment, I do not think he's going to have a Syria to return to, so make sure to put 4 seasons, so that way the Russians and the Syrians know that we know their time is nigh, and the only thing they have left are 4 seasons, and just like the last season, winter, they're going to be washed away with the winds for the large part. But nevertheless, I hope that you all put that in the comment section below. So put 4 seasons in the comment section below again if you made it to this point, and if you really enjoyed the channel and you want to support it and help it to keep on running, please make sure to support us on Patreon. The link is in the description below. No one has to, but it does help us to make these video projects possible and do this as a full-time job. And I have to give a massive shout out to all of our patrons who are currently there at the moment, because if it wasn't for all of y'all, we would not have been able to make this channel possible and the covering news that we've been doing so far. And so a massive thanks to all of you once again for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.